The start of a new month means I get to tell you everything I read last month and let you know if it's worth your time. Very, very incredible reads in April, and I cannot wait to tell you about them. Also, if you were to look me dead in the eyes and say we are 1/3 of the way through 2025, I would not believe you. I started looking through my calendar and I wanted to make a list of like my top 5 books from the first third of the year. I was like, wait, I can literally do that in this video because it's literally been a third of the year, which is absolutely insane. So as well as me sharing all of my April book stats, all of my reads, all the things I felt about everything that I read, I'm also going to share with you my top 5 books of the year so far, which are just some absolutely incredible, outstanding books that you've heard me yap about for a long time at this point. But needless to say, it's always nice to hear again, because the more I hear a book, the quicker I am to add it to my TBR. So hopefully you will be as well. But first, we're going to go through April and see everything that I loved and didn't like very much. Okay, I read 9 books in April. I read 4,392 pages. So that's the highest book count and the highest page count of the year so far. I read 1 sci-fi, 6 romance, 1 fantasy, and 1 literary fiction. And my average star rating was 3.72. I'm just going to go through and talk about each book in the order that I read them last month. First book that I read in April was Lightbringer, which is the 6th book in the almost completed series of Red Rising by Pierce Brown. It is number 6 of, I think, 7. Hopefully 7 comes out next year. I do have another video on my page, which kind of includes all of my thoughts on the Red Rising series, or the first 3 in the series. It does have spoilers, though, so be very careful if you're curious about them and want to read them. I gave Lightbringer 4 stars. It was absolutely incredible. It was a really, really good, like, lead up to what we assume is going to be the last book in the series, called Red God, hopefully next summer. Pierce Brown, count your days if it's not next summer, because a girl cannot wait much longer than that, okay? I've yapped about the series so much across all of my platforms that I don't want to yap too much about it again. But I will say the first 3 in the series are outstanding. I absolutely love them. The second 3, which is Iron Gold, Dark Age, and Lightbringer, were super good. It was harder to understand as a typically non-sci-fi reader. But as I got myself going and like understood what was going on, it was easier. But I will say, I feel like I'm going to have a much better time reading those as a reread, as opposed to my first read just kind of being like, okay, where are we? Like, what is going on? But for the most part, I had a great time. There were so many, it's hard to talk about this because I don't want to give spoilers, obviously. And so much about this book is just interwoven with characters that we've gone through an entire, decades with, and it just ties together so beautifully and heartbreakingly people that you've felt like you've known and loved forever. So heartbreaking, beautiful, and a really fantastic culmination of all the work that we put in through books 1 through 6. So I'm very, very excited to see how that wraps up, and terrified to see how that wraps up. As you guys have known, if you've been around my channel at all, I've been quite the emotional wreck over this series as we've gone through it. And it was just super, super good. So obviously this is me recommending to you to read the series, start with the first 3, see how you're feeling, and then keep going if you've really, really enjoyed it, because those characters just continue to get better and better and more complex. The world gets more complex as you go. And it was just a really, really fantastic experience. Next book I read last month was Say You'll Remember Me by Abby Jiminez. 3 books within this stack. I'm not going to talk about too much because I did film a reading vlog for the 3 April releases that I was super pumped about, which was Say You'll Remember Me, The Conditions of Will, and Great Big Beautiful Life. So I'm just going to kind of give you my basic thoughts, but in my next video, which should be out 2 weeks after I post this video, you'll be able to see like my full in-depth, as I'm reading it, full thoughts on these just as I go. It was very, very fun to film, so I'm excited for you guys to see it. Still working on that one, and wanted to get my April reads out to you guys first. But this book was cute. This started me on my journey this past month of reading the entire Abby Jiminez backlist. So you're going to see a lot of her name in this stack, okay? This book reignited my love for just that classic fun romance while also having that deep emotional pull that Abby always puts within her books. It's like such a feel-good, funny time until it's not anymore and you want to cry. You know what I'm saying? This book specifically, I think, is my least favorite of hers. There was some parts of it that just cringed me out a little bit. You've probably seen it all over social media. Just a few extra pop culture references that sometimes are fun and other times are like this kind of took me out of the story. Like, a lot of us read these books to escape our lives for a minute. So when it calls back to attention, the real world, I just was kind of like, oh, girl, like, it was just a little bit much. A lot of people don't like this because of the insta-love. I didn't necessarily find a huge issue with that. I feel like if you do insta-love well, it can be done well. And Abby, she just does most things well. So none of this is like me hating on this book. I think I ended up giving this book 3 stars, 3.5 stars. I think after looking back and like, I think I read this like way towards the beginning. Yeah, I read this way towards the beginning of April. I'm going to go ahead and give it 3 just because it's not like sticking around in my head. I feel like I can't give accurate star ratings until it's been like a week or so, just because it all depends on like, did this story stick with me? Am I still thinking about these characters? Does this world still leave an imprint on me at all? And honestly, no, it was a fun, good time while I read it. But after the fact, I'm just kind of like, all right. Whereas some of her other books, I still, like years later, am thinking about the characters. The next book I read in April was The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. This was without a doubt my favorite read of April. And again, I'm not going to yap too much about it because it's definitely going to be all kind of talked about in that reading vlog. This book felt like an inside joke that you were meant to be a part of. That's my best way to explain what Jessa Hastings' writing feels like. If you've been around at all, you know I'm a big Magnolia Parks universe fan. The first time, just as a little background, the first time I read Magnolia Parks, the very first book, I was like, I don't really like this. I went back to read the second one and her writing just grew on me so much. She writes like her stream of thoughts are unedited. You get so many mundane moments with characters that draw you into this person's life and basically convinces your subconscious that these must be real people. There's a lot of times where I read and I'm like, oh yeah, cool fictional character. This, if you were to tell me, if she were to come out and say in a few years, hey, sorry, I lied to you. Actually, all these are based on true people that actually exist, I would be not shocked at all, just because she writes like these people really are a part of her everyday life, where she gets to observe the small nuances of every character. And I'm learning more and more about me as a reader. I love a good plot. I think plot is so important, but characters are my top thing. Even if it's a more character-driven story, I'm going to eat that up. What I've discovered is if you're more of like a plot-driven person, you need things happening constantly, different, like constant plot, maybe her writing isn't for you. But if you're a character-driven person, her writing will be for you, because just getting to know these characters was so interesting. This literally takes place over the course of, I think, 2 weeks, and I could not put this down. It felt like a mystery novel to me. Like, that's the level, like a thriller. Like, even though that's not the vibes at all, I couldn't put it down. Like, I was so enthralled by this world. I think I gave it a 4.75. There was one tiny thing that I didn't love. But besides that, this is so almost perfect to me. Her writing is just something that I have found nowhere else. There's nothing like it. That sounds dramatic because it is. There really is nothing like Jessa's writing. It makes you think so deeply about the world and about your state of mind and your own character so much. I don't know how she does it, you guys. Like, I really don't. Like, I leave all of her books thinking, wow, like, I understand humanity better. I understand why people do the things that they do so much better because of her writing. Essentially, this book follows Georgia, and her family lives in small town South Carolina in the Bible Belt. The parents in the story were not necessarily bad parents, but they parented their children different, and it resulted in people choosing vastly different lives. And in a lot of senses, they were parented in very unfair ways and unjust ways. Because of their belief systems and the things that were kind of going on in South Carolina at the time. Georgia specifically, and one of her other brothers, were treated very poorly and unfairly when they were younger, and she's done the work to go through the grieving process of the stuff that she faced and go through the trauma of everything. And when she comes back to see her family, they find out the truth about a lot of stuff, and they start grieving stuff that she's already worked through. And it's very interesting to see the dynamic of people who have worked through their trauma and people who have not. And it is written so perfectly that it just makes you think Jessa herself must have gone through this. My most favorite part of this book was Georgia studies body language for a living, basically, and you get to see inside of her mind how she knows what somebody is feeling before they ever demonstrate it, and it was so cool. I literally left this book thinking, I have got to go study that because that looked just the way that her brain worked, the way that she knew everything that was going to happen constantly. Like her family would call her like psychic or call her like detective because she always knew and she was always right about how everybody was feeling and knew the truth before the truth could ever be known by anybody else. And it was so cool. That was my favorite thing. And again, one of my favorite things that Jessa does, she creates characters that have these ticks about them. They have these little things that only people that exist in real life have, you guys. So the fact that like she creates characters with such depth, and not just like depth of character and emotion, depth of just like these little tiny habits or little tiny things that they do that like only real people have, guys. I just can't even like explain to you how real these people are. Okay. Next up, I read First Time Caller by BK Borison. I gave this 4 stars. You've probably seen this all over your For You page, okay? And when that happens, I get wary. I get scared because sometimes people say a book is the love of their life and the best thing that they've literally ever read, and they'll talk all about it, and I pick it up and I'm like, did we read the same thing? Like, did we? This held up, you guys. This held up. Did I find it as like a 5-star? No, but this was a solid romance, okay? Solid. It had me laughing. It had me feeling emotional. I was along for the ride. I was never bored. The concept of it was so cute, very Sleepless in Seattle, and honestly, like very unique. Not just like a fun meet cute, like a very unique and creative meet cute that happened in the beginning. And I just honestly, like, I loved the concept of this. Essentially, we have Aiden. He's a radio show host. And Lucy's 12-year-old daughter calls in late one night to the radio show host, Aiden. I forgot to mention, he's like a love radio show host. Like, he does a show on romance and love, okay? In his personal life, he's really struggling with love and romance and, like, how he's feeling about just all of that stuff. But nobody really knows that. So Lucy's 12-year-old daughter calls into the station late one night to get dating advice for her mother, which leads us to Lucy and Aiden meeting each other and all of the stuff that happens. I found it very creative, cute. I was not bored at all. Sometimes there are times when I'm reading like a fun little romance that I'm just like, oh, like I'm bored. Like, can we get on with it? This was so well paced. And I just honestly had a good time. I'm not necessarily saying that they reinvented the wheel with this, but they did make the wheel a really fun time to be a part of. If that makes sense. I would really recommend this if you're looking for just like a fun palate cleanser in the middle of maybe a bigger series. This is a fun one. And then I began my journey through Abby Jiminez's backlist, okay? I had already read Part of Your World, Yours Truly, and Just for the Summer by her, and I had not read her first 3 books, and so I went ahead and read all 3 of these books. And I'm not gonna lie, she's had her charm, she's had her wit, she's had her unique style of writing, just cute, fun, and emotional rom-coms from the beginning, okay? Now, you can tell, like, The Friend Zone was her first book, but she just got better and better. She writes a totally different story with totally new characters, totally new issues, and you know, fun things within the whole romance world, while also staying true to her normal writing style, where it makes you feel almost nostalgic. First 3 of her books are all within, like, the same universe, and then I believe the next 3 are all within the same universe. And then this new book, Say You'll Remember Me, is the beginning of a new universe. So these are all interconnected standalones. These are all interconnected standalones. And then Say You'll Remember Me is the beginning of a new interconnected standalone. So in book 1, we have 2 characters, you know, whatever, they fall in love. In book 2, it's that character from book 1, the best friend. In book 3, it's book 1's cousin. Am I making any sense? All I'm saying is these characters exist in each other's world, okay? My favorite book from this interconnected standalone series is the middle one. It was so cute. I literally loved it. I had such a good time. But honestly, all of these were such a good time just in general. Like, it was so fun to just throw on audiobook and go for a walk because I just was honestly entertained the whole time because she just is really funny. Book 1, I gave 3 stars. Book 2, I gave 4. And then book 3, I gave 3.25. I also think her covers got way, way better than these first 3. And I was very pleasantly surprised by them because I felt like the titles were cringy, to be honest, especially the Happy Ever After playlist. And that was my favorite one. I like picked that up and I was like, oh, like, am I going to be so cringed out? And honestly, it was such a pleasant surprise. I really had a great time with it. In book 1, we follow Kristen and Josh. Kristen and Josh are in a wedding together, and it is Kristen's best friend and Josh's best friend. Kristen is facing some serious medical issues that may potentially make her infertile. And Josh just moved to this town where the wedding is taking place, and he's always dreamt of a big family. He's basically starting over. He essentially essentially falls hard for Miss Girl, and Miss Girl keeps him at arm's length because she knows that his hopes and dreams are of a big family while she's dealing with this potentially really, really serious thing going on with her medically. It's slow burn. It's fun. I can tell it was Abby's first book, but that doesn't by no means meant that it was not a good time. She deals with issues like these very well, so much so that you think that maybe she knows someone who must have gone through this or maybe has gone through this herself. It really is like so cool because you get such insight on issues that you may have no idea about actually in all three of these books. Book 2, I can't really tell you a ton about because something happens in book 1 that could spoil this book for you, but essentially you are following a friend of Kristen's in this book, and she is dealing with grief, and she is basically learning how to fall in love again after going through grief. And I know I always resonate so much more with books that deal with grief, and when grief is dealt with well in a book, it really always just resonates so deeply with me, and this just did so well. Essentially, the friend, I don't want to tell you her name because it would just give away too much for you, but the friend in this falls in love with somebody who is very famous, and they're essentially finding a way to go through life and figure out how all of that works for them. And I don't know, something about this book was just so sentimental and sweet. This is up there with my favorites of hers for sure. And then Life's Too Short follows Josh's from the first book's cousin, where he falls in love with this internet famous travel vlogger, and her entire family has dealt with the curse that is ALS, which in real life still does not have a cure. A beautiful demonstration of how ALS must affect families. It gave me so much more information and empathy for people who are dealing with ALS and things that go on really in the real world, not just in a fiction world, but in the real world. Things like what happened in this book are happening to real people. And essentially Vanessa, her mother died from ALS and her sister died from ALS. And so because there's no cure and there's not even a real test for it other than ruling out other diseases, she basically decides she's going to live her life like tomorrow is her last day. She's 28 years old, and both her mother and her sister never made it to 30. So she is pretty much terrified. She meets Josh's cousin, Adrian, who is a staunch, type A lawyer, and then she's over here transient, goes and does whatever she wants all the time, and their worlds collide, and it is so fun and so sweet, and honestly, again, so informational about things that I never really understood before. And I leave these books feeling not like reading is ever a waste of time, but feeling like I just spent my time laughing and having a good time, but also learning about stuff that's really happening in the real world. And Abby just does a really, really good job with that. Next book I read was City of Gods and Monsters by Kayla Edwards. I gave this book 2.75. This is tough for me. Because I think this is me acknowledging that me as a reader, I have just changed so much. This is not me saying I don't like romantasy, because I absolutely do. But this one, I'd seen so many people talk about how incredible it is, how it's like their new favorite series, that it gives them feelings of like SJM series. And I was like, well, yeah, I might as well try it. There was really, truly not a second of this book that I was like, okay, I'm in. I've got to keep reading. I gave it 2.75 even because the story itself did have the correct structure. A lot of the characters were fleshed out. It was a full story, and I appreciated that. And I felt like there was a good amount of creativity going on, but for some reason, there was just way too many cringy lines. There was way too much emphasis on the quick and easy romance of a fantasy series. If there's gonna be love within a fantasy series, I feel like it has got to be done well. And I am just so used to reading ones that have been done so well. And I know every other basic girl in the whole world says this, but SJM does have the perfect roadmap for how that is supposed to look, at least to me. All of her books have not felt rushed. It always felt like the perfect addition to a plot that was already going on. And this book just really fell flat for me. I'm not saying I would never continue, but I just could not get down with the needless cringy comments or like the random bits of just like spiciness that did not need to be there. And I by no means am like saying if you liked this, then like you don't know what reading is. Not at all. Like I can totally see why people liked this. I just think I'm transitioning so much more into loving romance being a subplot because it just takes away from the main parts of the story for me. And if we're only there to get to those super intense scenes, I just can't, I don't enjoy it as much. And I'm learning that about me as a reader and how much I've changed as I've read, because I don't necessarily know if that was true or false before. But as I've matured as a reader, I love a good romance. Obviously, I literally read 85% romance this past month, but it's just got to be done right. It has got to be done right, and not just for the sake of throwing romance in there. It really, really felt like to me that this author wanted to write a romance and just threw a fantasy world around it. I'm not saying she did a bad job with the fantasy, she didn't, but the only part that felt clunky to me was like flipping between the fantasy part of it versus the romance part of it. And I did hear like the second and third books get better. I just don't know if I can commit again to a literal like 720 page book where the whole time I'm just like, oh, there's more pages. There's more. Like I have to keep going. Like at first I was reading it on my Kindle and then I was like, I've got to read audio just to get through this. Like I just was having such a hard time. And I know for a fact when I'm not enjoying a book because I immediately just like find excuses to do absolutely anything but read. And it's like, ding, 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 I don't actually like this book. And I have a very hard time DNFing things because I want to see it through and I want to give it a fair chance. And I also like don't love not continuing series either. So I'm not really sure. So if you've read City of Gods and Monsters and you think I should keep going, especially knowing like I love Throne of Glass, ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, like, you know, your classic basic girl romance series, but I just couldn't get down with this. Let me know if it was just like the headspace I was in and if I need to try it again. But yeah, I'm really curious about your thoughts on that because I'm always open to it just being me and the headspace I'm in when I read it because reading is so subjective even to yourself. I really believe a book can find you at the perfect time or the worst time, whereas if that book had found you a month later, you might enjoy it more. Or if that book that you love so much was read by you next year, you might not have loved it that much. I think that it really just depends on literally the mood you're in and what is going on in your world and in your life and in your mind at the time. And so it could have just been that. And so I am curious if you've read it, if you think it's something I would like, because you guys are getting to know my reading style. I'm getting a lot of recs from you guys, and I really love like a large plethora of subjects and genres, and I'm trying to give kind of everything a chance, and that just was not doing it for me. And the last book I read this month was Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. Again, this is going to be in that reading vlog that I post later this month, so you'll get to see kind of my ins and outs and thoughts as I read this, like page by page, basically. I gave this book 4 stars. There's just this incredible talent that Emily has for evoking emotions in you that you didn't even know you had for reasons you don't even understand. I literally cried at the end of this book, and I cannot tell you why. I can't tell you why. I don't know why I felt so deeply for the characters. I don't know why it hit me just right at the right time, but it really did. Again, you're hearing everybody say this. This book is quite different than what she normally does. Think Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Think The Favorites by Lane Fargo. She's doing a mysterious interview with someone who used to be known as the tabloid princess, but then went completely dark to the media for years and years and years. And we're figuring out what actually happened to this person. And Alice, our main character, is a writer. And true to Emily Henry fashion, Alice is competing for this job with another writer named Hayden Anderson. So they have a month to interview Margaret, and over the course of the month, they're going to kind of put together a proposal for this book that they want to write, and whoever does better at the proposal will get the job. And so that's essentially the premise, and I feel like it was done so well. At first, when I was reading the interviews, I was like, you get essentially, I'll show you. You get chapters like normal, and then you also get like a section that's called the story. And this is where we jump into Margaret's life and all the stuff that happened and get to know Margaret's life just as much as you're getting to know your main, FMC, MMC. So she's never done something like that before, and it really was done very well. I loved what she did with it, but there were times that the interview did kind of drag for me. There's some things that I still don't understand why they had to be put in. It just almost felt like filler things about Margaret's life. But other than that, I really enjoyed this. I thought the romance was really cute and sweet. And overall, it was just a very pleasant experience. April was my highest amount of reading so far this year, and also housed some of my very favorite reads of the year and caps off 1/3 of the year, which is absolutely insane. So I figured I would tell you my top 5 books of the year so far, none of which will come as a huge surprise to you. Number 5, we've got Onyx Storm. This was released in January of this year. It is book 3 in the Empyrean series, also known as Fourth Wing, Iron Flame, and Onyx Storm. This is number 3 in a book series that is going to be 5, and it leaves you on a cliffhanger that absolutely has you messed up currently in April and May of 2025 when this came out months ago. I still think about it. I'm still thinking about it. And if you're one of those Fourth Wing haters, I'm sorry. If you don't get it, you don't get it. And I unfortunately get it because I'm in the heat of dealing with the consequences of not knowing what happens after the events of the last page of this book. Until the foreseeable future, because I don't think she's even close to writing book 4. So yeah, number 5, Onyx Storm. Number 4, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. If you've been around at all, you know I was pleasantly surprised by this book. I've never before this year, been a big sci-fi girl, and this book was so cute, so fun. Had the best time reading this. I literally picked this up after I DNF'd my first DNF of the year, and I just was so frustrated with the book that I had been reading. And I picked this up so scared because I was like, am I going to understand what's going on here? You could understand what's going on here. If you're not a sci-fi girl, you totally can. I'm not typically a sci-fi girl, and this book was so available. Like, it was so readily available for me to understand and so cute. I don't know how to explain to you how cute this sci-fi novel was, okay? So precious and cute. Number 3, no surprises here. You just heard me rant and rave about this book, The Conditions of Will by Jessa Hastings. Anything that Jessa Hastings writes, you can throw it in a blender and you can spoon feed it to me, okay? I love everything this woman writes, and she deserves a place in this top 5 list so much. Like, this woman's writing just speaks to my soul. And I loved it so much. Number 2, Brandon Sanderson's The Hero of Ages, also known as number 3 in the Mistborn trilogy, the original Mistborn trilogy, also known as the book that shattered me into a billion quadrillion pieces and made my first video on my book talk go viral, where every single person on that video saw me ugly crying over fictional characters. This book series is a lot to digest, okay? It's 3 thick books, but the payoff in this book is the most incredible completion of a trilogy I've ever read, and it just broke and completed so much of my soul. If you're in the mood for something denser that you're gonna need to put in the work for the fantastic payoff that it has, this is where you start. If you're curious about Brandon Sanderson, this is where you start, coming from someone who has only ever read this by Brandon Sanderson, this trilogy. So I really, really need to get on my Way of Kings journey, okay? And if you have any encouragement about that, please let me know. I'm terrified of the Way of Kings because I know what this book did to me. I also know the amount of work it took to get the payoff in this one. You really kind of have to know what you're getting yourself into with this series. It's so interesting. It's so good, but it's a lot of information all the time. But it was so worth that payoff. And nothing in the whole world will ever compare to the feeling I had reading the ending of this book. And of course, in my number 1 spot, I want you to take a guess. Take a guess right now. What do you think it is? I couldn't pick one. I'm sorry, I couldn't pick one. If I really had to pick one, it would be Morningstar. Morningstar is my top read of the year. It is absolutely fantastic. It is just, this first trilogy by Pierce Brown. I hate to say it altered my brain chemistry because everybody says that and they don't really mean it, but I mean it. When I say it, I mean it. This first trilogy is immaculate. There is not a single thing I'd change. Not a single thing that I would change. I don't know how to explain to you some of the scenes that are written, and even some of the unimportant scenes in these books repeat in my mind like they are literal scenes of my own life. I cannot recommend these 3 books enough to you. As a girl who never thought she'd be into sci-fi, never thought that she would be into a book like this, you don't even have to commit to the whole series. And please, my haters, just chill out, okay? Read the first 3 and decide if you want to keep going. But the first 3 are just immaculate masterpieces to me, and they are my number 1 and probably will remain my number 1 for the whole year. So I'm excited to see how that ranking changes. I will keep you updated as I go. I'll probably do a midway through the year top 5 or top 10, and we can see how things have changed. But yeah, of course, this was number 1. Are any of us surprised at this point? Are any of us surprised? No. As always, it is just such a fun time getting to talk about books with you and discuss all the things that I'm reading and getting all the suggestions from you. I am curious if anybody has an author, since I've now gone through Abby's entire backlist, if anybody has an author that kind of reminds them of Abby, that I can binge their entire backlist again, because they are just such good walking audiobooks, and I'm looking for something that will make me feel similar to that. And honestly, any of these books that you know that I like, I would love your opinions. I would love if anything that I read this month you liked or didn't like. I love hearing all of your thoughts, and I love getting your suggestions. You guys are recommending so many good books to me, and I've added them all to my TBR. The top one I'm getting is freaking Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I'm so scared about that book, but please keep recommending everything to me, and I'm excited to add everything to my TBR and hopefully get to them very, very soon, because obviously I love chatting about books we're all reading together because it's so fun. Please let me know what your favorite reads of April were. Let me know all the things you read in April. Let me know the books that you're loving, the books that you're hating, the books that you're excited to read. Let me know what you thought of all these new releases that came out this month. Let me know your top 5 of the first third of the year. And as always, there are a million places that we can hang out. There's Fable, Goodreads, my Etsy shop, Instagram, TikTok, obviously YouTube. I also post a ton of YouTube shorts if you're into that. All of those things will be on the end page for you. And then also I list everything always in the description for you so we can hang out basically anywhere. I also have an Amazon storefront where you can check out like all my stuff for my bookshelves, my book corners, all of that stuff. I have a book wish list on there where you can see all the books that I'm wanting to add to my shelves so that you can put them on your wish lists. There are just a ton of ways that we can hang out outside of here, and I love getting to know you on all of those platforms as well. There are lots of new faces around my YouTube, which is so fun for me. This is my favorite form of content to produce for you guys, and it is just literally a blast for me. So thanks for chatting with me. Thanks for listening to me rant about books all the time, because if you weren't here, I would just be talking to my wall anyways about them. But yeah, thanks for being here, and I will see you next time.